These are the primary roles of water, but we're primarily concerned in this class about its role in supporting cardiovascular function, supporting blood pressure, and dealing with heat stress. So let's look at the balance of water. Okay? The balance of water is water that we take in versus water we put out. Well, how do most normal people lose water? Two different mechanisms: insensible water loss and sensible water loss. All that means is, are you aware of it or not? Insensible water loss is loss through respiratory function. When you exhale, remember a while ago we said it doesn't make any difference what the water or what the air is like out here. When you inhale, your body saturates and warms it up, okay, or cools it down depending on what the air temperature is. But when you exhale it, like right now, it's not 100% humidity in here, and when you're drinking water with every breath, it's minute amounts, but they accumulate, okay? And we'll talk about how much in just a little bit. Skin leakage. That's not sweating, okay? Your skin is not a perfect barrier. It leaks. I think in the med books they call it transdermal evaporative water loss. All it means is that your skin leaks, okay? Not a big deal. Generally not a lot of water leakage here in the normal person. The normal person is not generally using or losing a lot of water through respiratory function. When we talk about sensible water loss, things that you're aware of, sweating of course, through the urine, through the feces. These are the normal mechanisms, okay? So we're going to do it that way. I got one slide in the wrong place there. How much of this do we do? So this is what we call obligatory water loss. This is that 170 pound, 180 pound guy, buck ass naked, sitting on the sofa all day, doesn't move. He's still going to lose body water. Okay? Think of it, this is the minimal amounts of water loss we see. Insensible water loss, almost a liter. That's respiratory function, skin leakage, okay? Minimal sweat loss, about 100 mils, that's not very much. Even if it's not hot in there, even if he's in a relatively air-conditioned room, he's still going to lose some water through sweat. Fecal loss, about 200 mils, okay? Things got to move along, okay? Minimal urine volume, probably half a liter. All that adds up to 1.5 liters before you move. If you just get out of bed and do the absolute minimal function that you can do as a person, sit on the couch all day, go take a crap and a pee when you need to, you're still going to lose 1.5 liters of water a day. Okay? That's a significant amount of water. Think about what we said in terms of how fast a firefighter can lose water inside that turnout gear. You can almost lose that, the average size firefighter can almost lose that in an hour as opposed to 24. Okay? Let's see. Okay, so if we take that normal person and we put them to work, and I don't mean heavy work, I mean just normal daily function. How do these things change? Well, the insensible water loss is going to increase because with more respiratory effort, you breathe more, you lose more water. Okay? Every time you exhale, you lose a little bit of water. Skin leakage will increase because basically you're increasing the blood pressure, the hydrostatic pressure inside your tissue, and it'll push more water through these leaking spots. Sensible water loss, you get up, you start moving around, your muscle tissue that you're moving, you're just walking around with and stuff, going to generate some heat. And because of that, you're going to increase your sweat rate a little bit. And that's going to be proportional to how much work you do. And that increased sweat rate, of course, is an increased water loss. And probably not a whole lot of change in urine and fecal loss. depending on, of course, how much fluid you drink, how much you eat. Okay, so this is the average everyday person just up moving around. We don't put numbers on it. What I want you to understand is how these things change with work. Okay, because it's virtually impossible to put numbers on these without talking about how much work you're doing and that kind of thing. Let's talk about a working firefighter. So the firefighters, believe it or not, are actually people. And so they have those same obligatory daily loss of fluids that every other human being has. But when they go to work, things change. Insensible water loss, like for example, the loss of water through respiratory function, drastically increases. Why? You're breathing a whole lot more. Okay? Well, this is on-scene work. You're also breathing this dry SCBA gas. Compressing air into that bottle that you use is a process that not only compresses the gas, but one of the processes is removing the water. Okay, the water leaves the gas when you compress it, and it's no longer in that bottle. And so when you turn that bottle on, and it comes back through that system and through that regulator, when it enters your body, when you inhale it, it is dry, has no water in it. What does our body do to air that we inhale? It humidifies it to 100%. Okay? So it's dry, or it's humidifying. It's using a lot more air, or a lot more water from the body to humidify that air than if you're just breathing air from the regular environment. So dry SCBA gas causes a drastic increase in respiratory water loss. Skin leakage increases because skin temperatures start to go up, causes the tissue to start to, the girls will say, oh, my pores are expanding. Well, yeah, I guess. Okay, but that's basically what's going on. Okay, blood pressure and tissue pressure, water pressures are going up, and it's going to cause that to push more water through those skin leakage sites. Sweating becomes, we've already talked about, sweating becomes a huge player here. 600 mils to a liter an hour just for the average, 170, 180 pound male doing a short bout. I shouldn't say a short bout, an hour's worth of okay. On the job, you may not work strenuously for a continuous 1 hour, but you will have bouts of time when your work insensible heat stress, which is dry artificially. Okay, remember, it's that whole vicious cycle that your brain and your sweat glands compete for. Okay. Again, disproportionate to workload. So this becomes separated from how much work you're doing. In the normal person, under normal conditions, when you work, you do muscular work, generate sweat proportionally to that. You sweat enough to get rid of that much water, to cool yourself that as much as you need, but not to excess. It's one of the ways that your body protects itself from dehydration. But we disconnect that here. That protective mechanism is disconnected or impaired, as we said earlier. And so now you're just sweating. You just turn it up, you crank out the sweat as fast as you can, and you're losing water even just standing there. You know that you go to training, especially, nice hot training day, you're standing around in your turnout gear, whether you've hit a lick or not. You take off your turnout gear and you're drenched. Why? Because this process has already started. That whole uncompensable heat stress environment is already in place. And you're already driving sweat rates through the roof disproportionately to how much work you're doing. Okay? These things will increase, fecal and urine loss will increase secondary to the workload. So the more you work, the more water you lose, you dehydrate yourself, and then you need more water to be put in the gut and more water to put in the urine to be able to get rid of the things that those things get rid of. And so when you start to intake fluids, okay, when you start to intake fluids, one of the first places it goes is there. Okay, because your body needs to void those things. There's a reason they call it waste material. You don't want it hanging around. Okay? So these are problems that are associated with firefighting that drive water loss and are consequences of water loss that most people don't have to deal with. Let's see. Yeah. So we talked about sources of heat stress and what heat stress does to you, and this process of dehydration. And these things occur whether you like it or not. You can't avoid these things if you're going to do this job. So what's happening? What are the problems associated with firefighting that make this such a big deal for you? High levels of physical work demand. Lots of heavy work, lots of muscular activity, lots of heat production. Okay? You're working in this uncompensable environmental exposure, so you're working inside that turnout gear. Makes it virtually impossible for you to lose heat from your body. Not only that, this stuff is also artificially accelerating water loss through sweating. High ambient temperature working environment. Now, this is what's going on inside that, because this kind of works together, this two. This, when I say ambient working temperature, when I say ambient, I'm talking about what you personally are exposed to inside that turnout gear. It just gets hot in there, okay? There's heat accumulating inside that stuff that you're needing to compensate for. And that's a combination, not only the metabolic heat, but some of the heat that's leaking through the turnout gear from the outside. When you leave the fire and you go outside and you go into rehab, hopefully you got enough smarts to take off this turnout gear and get out of this uncompensable heat stress environment. But now you've got to deal with the ambient temperatures outside. So later in the week, you're going to come out of this nasty ass uncompensable heat stress environment, sweating like a pig, dehydrated, and you're going to come out into 85-degree temperatures outside. I don't know what the humidity is supposed to be like, but it probably won't be nice. Okay? And so you're stepping out into a situation where it's not ideal for the loss of heat for anybody. Now, if you had to do it today, it wouldn't be too bad out there. Okay? You still have the stuff to deal with when you're inside your gear and working, but when you come out, you cool off pretty quickly because the ambient temperature is pretty cool. But if you're, we have a lot of really nasty temperatures here. It was pretty nice summer this summer. Last year we had a streak of, 7 or 8 days where the heat index was anywhere from 112 to 120 degrees. And guess what? We had 2-alarm apartment fires like they were going out of business. Everybody's air conditioners were blowing up, and usually in June and July, when at least around here the fire season's a little bit calmer compared to the cold environment, they were busy as hell last year. Hell. Okay? So you never can count on what this is going to be doing, and you have to be prepared for it. So we also have, obviously when you're inside the fire, you can't consume fluids. When you come out into rehab, and this is one of the things that I continue to work on with the Indianapolis Fire Department, is doing a better job of rehab. In rehab right now, and I'm going to pick on IFD, and they don't care because I won't tell you anything that I haven't told the chief 1,000 times. When those guys come out of the fire and they go into rehab, there needs to be a more formal rehab process. Okay? A TSU guy who comes up and brings a gallon's worth of water and some paper cups and throws it on the bumper of the engine as he's dragging these bottles up is not rehab. Okay? Not good enough. We need to start that process. You need to get into a position where you can start to lose body heat and start the process of rehydration to do that. Okay? High levels of emotional stress. We haven't even talked about emotional stress at this point, but let me tell you something. You get good and dehydrated and good and hot. Okay? It not only affects your physical performance, but it will begin to interfere with your emotional state and your problem-solving abilities, your thinking abilities, your cognitive skills. That's something that's really going to be driven home this week. Okay? You guys want a break now?
Yeah, if you're at a point at the end of this slide, we'll take them for just a few minutes here, give them a break.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and get some lunch. We'll come back. We'll finish up. What we're going to talk about when we finish up is, okay, we've told you all the bad things that can happen and what the consequences of these things are. Now, what do we do about it? That's what we'll talk about next. All right?